This is Amy Poehler. My new movie, Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, is coming to theaters June 14th, and it's making me feel joy and sadness and anger, definitely some disgust, and I think a little fear. But I'm also feeling these new emotions like anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and ennui.
It's what you call the boredom.
Okay, that one was weird. It's gonna be the feel everything movie of the summer. Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Only in theaters June 14th. Get tickets now.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmersday, June 3rd, 2024. Happy birthday to my daughter, Hannah. On the show today, news, listener questions, and a universal survey that asks which singer or musical group you'd want for Halloween Horror Nights. Imagine the Sabrina Carpenter nonsense outros. Then in our main segment, Jim gives us the history of Disneyland's fireworks shows. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says the hardest part of beekeeping is thinking of all the names. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It is hard, Len. I mean, so far, I've only come up with 6 names. I got Queenie, I got Honey, I got Buzz, and Sting. Also, Abby and Beyonce. But
Beyonce!
Beyonce! But also, you know what's also difficult about naming bees is persuading them to wear their teeny tiny name tags.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Every hobby has its challenges, and I think that's that one.
It does.
All right, Jim, before we get started, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Jeffrey James, Miranda Horton, Todd Witowski, Craig Nelson, Jacob Sager-Weinstein, and Nate Brown, who I'm singing in the parks tomorrow. Ooh. Jim, these are the Pixar voice talent working on the latest idea in streaming, custom movie versions for different demographics, where the story changes depending on who you are. They say they're currently working out the dialogue for 2 new emotions, guilt and shame, for a scene in Inside Out 2 where Riley reveals to her Italian and Jewish grandmothers that she's not hungry. True story.
Wow. Okay.
On to the news. Folks, the news is sponsored by touringplans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right, Jim, a light week for news so far. A couple of things. One, Universal Orlando has changed the name of one of its upcoming Epic Universe coasters from Starfall Racers to Stardust Racers, after complaints from a company with the word Starfall in its name. No word from Ziggy Stardust on this, but Jim, I guess this happens all the time.
Well, yeah, that in fact, my understanding here is that Starfall Education, I think, was the company that raised its hand. In fact, I want to say that this park itself, instead of Epic Universe, once upon a time was called Epic Universal, and that changed for various reasons as well. Always an interesting time when we're going to make some T-shirts, and it's like
now it gets real.
Yeah, exactly. That's it exactly. In fact, just recently, I forget who it was who shared it, but they showed the original. And in fact, it's kind of ironic because Fantasmic has just begun running again at Disneyland, but it was the not only the original name for that nighttime show, Imagination, but the logo that had been created for all the merch and the T-shirts and the hats and the coffee mugs.
Yeah.
And then somebody had to go to Mr. Eisner and say, we can't actually copyright the word imagination. So it's like but yeah, it's the imagination in that font with the dragon leaning over. It was a very impressive logo.
And then a couple of months later, there were 50,000 people in the Ivory Coast of Africa who were all wearing imagination ! Shirts. Because this is the thing, right? I mean, a theme park doesnb buy like a couple dozen of those shirts. They make tens of thousands of them. Yeah.
That reminds me. I need to go check the webpage for the Ivory Coast eBay. See what I can score.
Speaking of Universal, DreamWorks Land is open again for guest previews. It had shut down for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bop over there in a couple of days and go take a look. I think this is all for kids, but still should be fun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, Disney filed a notice of commencement for its work on Dinoland at Disney's Animal Kingdom, so that's going to happen sooner rather than later. Jim, have you heard any dates for when things might start closing over there?
All I've been hearing is that they want to ride out the summer and then, just put it this way, if you're a Dinosaur the Ride fan, schedule your trip for Disney World before Labor Day, okay? Just putting that out there.
All right, speaking of other new things, Disney's drone show, Dreams That Soar, had its official debut last week. And Jim, I think the most impressive thing about the show is the huge crowds at Disney Springs. Have you seen the videos from this?
I have.
It is standing room only in Disney Springs. And also, apparently, standing room only on I-4, which, let me just say, not the best idea you could possibly have in a motor vehicle. Do not pull off the side of the road of I-4 to watch a drone show. Don't do that.
No. Now, to be fair here, I don't know if you've seen some of the other videos from later on in the week, especially when it comes to the 10:30 show.
Yeah, much later, yeah.
Much easier to get into. My understanding is that Disney is, it's trying to figure out how to get its arms around the weekend crowds.
Ooh! Because they had actually, for the first couple shows, the parking garages were full and security was busy. On the one hand, they had to keep people from standing in the parking garages to watch the show. But then on the other side, they basically were kicking people out of Saratoga Springs as well. And they had the crowd control issues in the West Side itself. So yeah, busy week for security.
Yeah, and
maybe they should use some of the drones for surveillance. I'm just throwing that out there, guys. Like, we're not going to know the difference between 800 drones and 797 drones. You can use 3 of them.
It's like, Peter Pan only has one eye. What happened there?
He's over at I-4. It's a long story.
There we go.
But yeah, super impressive. And so the show looks like it's being well received. Good for that. Also, Jim, just this last little piece of information, just going to throw it out there. Did you know that vitamin B12 powder can be used to make beverages that glow under ultraviolet light? I'm not saying that that's going to be used for anything, but just maybe file that away for later. All right. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. That's a very interesting other shoe to wait to drop
there, Len. It's a very
Len.
specific thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. On to surveys. Jim, Lucy and others sent in this Universal Orlando survey about musical acts for Halloween Horror Night houses. And the questions go like this. Please select from a list below all the criteria a musical artist would need to meet in order to be a great featured house at Halloween Horror Nights. So must fall firmly into the horror category, must be something or someone that I like, must be well known, must be new to Halloween Horror Nights, must be something or someone that I've heard of, must be or have new content in general, must be popular, or none of these. And then the second question is, if Universal were to feature a house based on a musical artist, which of the following descriptions would sound the most appealing to you? It would be co-created by the musical artist. It would be endorsed by the musical artist. It would bring this musical artist's iconic works to life. And it would be inspired by this musical artist. So, Jim, first couple of questions there. Are they trying to gauge, like, how much money are we going to have to pay for this talent?
Well, I mean, obviously, what's fascinating about this is, do we think, like, this can't be for this year, right? You can't be doing...
I don't think it's for this year, no, because it would take longer than 6 months to negotiate something like that.
No, absolutely.
2025, yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of an interesting way to go. And remember, the other thing worth taking into consideration here is, I mean, yes, we have the Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood. We have the Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando.
I know where you're going with this, and I didn't think of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have the year-round standalone Vegas Halloween Horror Night, or the Horror Night. In a town like Vegas, something tied to unnamed celebrities. This kind of makes sense.
It's funny you mentioned that, because in a couple of weeks, we're celebrating Hannah's birthday in Las Vegas, and she's never been to Area 15 or Omega Mart.
Oh dear.
So we're gonna do that. I know we're gonna do that one day.
Okay.
That's gonna be a hoot. Yeah.
Cool.
So the survey continues, and it asks about these musical artists specifically. So I'll go through them. Doja Cat. Okay. And then Maluma, Carol G, J Balvin, and Peso Pluma, who are Colombian, and Mexican singers. But then also Snoop Dogg And I immediately thought, like, wasn't this literally the plot of Day Shift? Where, by the way, have you seen this?
Yeah.
where Snoop Dogg is a cowboy vampire hunter. Like, I didn't know that that's what I needed in my life, Jim, until I saw the movie, and I'm like, is this the role that Snoop Dogg was born to play?
Yeah.
All right, Lady Gaga, and I think her in her meat outfit would be interesting there. Dr. Dre. The Weeknd, who already had a house.
California, right?
Where's Mr. Weeknd from? I think he's Toronto.
Okay. All right.
Bad Bunny from Houston. Kendrick Lamar. Pink Floyd, which was interesting. Ice Nine Kills, which is a heavy metal band from Boston. Ghost, which is a Swedish heavy metal band. Metallica and Eminem. And so a couple of thoughts here for Universal. This is just my opinion, Jim. Number one, Pink Floyd or Metallica would be fine. But guys, an Iron Maiden house pretty much writes itself. So imagine you're an English fighter pilot. You're shot down during World War II. You're captured by the Germans. You see the horrors of the Third Reich and you have to escape. So you open with Aces High. You go to see the inside of a German prison to Children of the Damned and The Prisoner. Then you get sentenced to death by the Nazis. And as you await your fate, the song is Hallowed Be Thy Name. But then you escape at the last second and you go into the forest to hide, where you see all the Nazis all fascinated by the occult, and that song is Number of the Beast. And then, of course, you exit to Run to the Hills. 2, this is my second idea, Jim. This is my second idea.
Yep.
If you want to get really weird, imagine a Halloween Horror Nights house with the Wiggles. Like, one room is just people strapped to chairs being force-fed to the tune of Fruit Salad Yummy Yummy, which I don't want to put too fine a point on it, already contains the lyrics, Chop Up Some Melons. Like, guys, it's right in front of you here.
Okay. All right.
I did this in an hour, guys. Invite me in. Bring the pizza and donuts. I will spitball ideas all day long for you.
Wow. Okay.
All right, anyway. You guys have any other ideas for popular artists or for Halloween Horror Nights? Let me know. Mm-hmm. All right, on to listener emails. This one's from Bruce in Brooklyn. He says, I've been getting ADRs since the dining plan first came out back in 2005. I pretty much went yearly and always had issues getting ADRs. Like for popular places like Be Our Guest, I was lucky to get something within 3 hours of when I wanted to eat. Even as late as last year, ADRs were hard to get. My next trip is in early July, and the first morning I was able to book, I saw something that I never saw. Just about every time was available to book at every restaurant. Somebody said Disney did something to help prevent bots taking all the reservations. Do you know if that's true or what changed? So Jim, I actually looked at this morning. So we're recording this on Friday, and today I checked Disney's website for dinner reservations for tonight for a party of 4. Jim, every single theme park restaurant still had tables available.
Wow.
Now, granted, for one of them, for Cinderella's Royal Table, the table wasn't until 10 p.m., but every restaurant had something. Even Oga's Cantina had multiple convenient times. And by the way, I also checked a few other days, like, we're sort of in that weird middle period right now between Memorial Day and the start of summer vacation. So I actually checked a couple days in the first week of summer vacation, like the weekend of, I think, June 8th, and then the following week. And then, no, same thing. Every restaurant has availability. And so I was like, well, why?
Mm-hmm.
So the only idea I've come up with here is a lot of places have the same menu for lunch and dinner now. Mm-hmm. So you get the same experience in the middle of the day without having to stay all night. So maybe you're substituting like I'm just throwing this out there, like a, Backlot Express lunch for a Brown Derby lunch and then just skipping dinner and going back to your hotel or something. I don't know. But every single restaurant has availability.
Wow. Forgive me for putting this out there, but given, think about it now, where people are getting up at 7 a.m. to grab reservations for rides. Could there have been a flip-flop here where, the notion of, I really need to get dinner reservations way out, where now it's like, I need to get up at 7 and make sure, we get on the most popular ride.
Oh, so you think maybe people have a finite amount of attention and they're putting it towards rides rather than meals?
This could be the situation. And arguably, if you think about it, that isn't the profit a little bit purer, when, they're paying for the access to the rides?
Yeah, that's true. So I think this is my other theory, that some of it was like, well, the $250 we're going to spend on, or $300 we're going to spend on dinner at Cinderella's Royal Table, well, we're spending that on Genie Plus and individual Lightning Lane, so that's where that money went anyway. Yeah, but to your point, the thing with Genie Plus versus food is you don't have any of those pesky expenses like employees or benefits. Yeah, okay. I think that's it. So I think it's a combination of things. It's the move to a common lunch and dinner menu, especially now where like dinner is fixed price, like at California Grill, where you can't get out for less than $80 per person. I think that has a lot to do with it. Also, Jim, on last week's show, I asked about the odd location of the Treasures of Xandar gift shop at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy. And the best explanation I heard was from Abigail, who said Disney might have been concerned about people throwing up on the merchandise. So that's interesting.
Yep.
We also heard from Imagineers who designed the ride, but that discussion can't be talked about right now. But in my regards to my idea to turn the Treasures of Xandar into a speakeasy, Sean sent in this 2 words for the Treasures of Xandar speakeasy idea: Groot beer.
Do it. Oh my God.
Jim,
do it.
Jim, how did we not think of this?
Wow.
How is there already not Groot beer?
Oh my God. Literally, Iger should be running out of his office right now. It's like, do this now.
I mean, how is it not?
What that would add just to the bottom line for the next quarter at Disney. Just sort of, like we went up 3 points on Wall Street just on the back of Groot beer. Holy
Groot beer, yeah. It could be their butter beer.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's work on this. Okay. Let's work on this. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, Disney Food Loves people, you know what to do now. And also, if you could make a Carousel of Progress themed version that uses sarsaparilla, that would be even better. Here's one from Jen and Jim. This is for you. Mm-hmm. It's Jen says, I'd like to hear from you the history of rope drop. When and at which park was a rope first used? What other opening strategies have been tried? How has opening evolved and differed at various parks? All right, so Jim, I think that's a great idea.
That is.
And my big question here is whether early Disneyland crowds were just as competitive as modern crowds, and I don't know. Things were different back then.
Oh, they were. But the interesting thing is, once upon a time, somebody had to come up with that. I mean, I remember once I got the opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to talk with Dick Nunes, and he talked about how when they opened Disneyland, the concept of a queue, it was the grand opening party where it's like, we got to line these people up, and just,
exactly,
just because we didn't know, A, there'd be this many, and B, they want to get on the ride. And they're throwing kids over, like the edge of the
fence,
teacup. Yeah. And it was like, somebody go out and buy a lot of chain, and so it's like,
Home Depot is like, what do you, Dick Nunes sent somebody to Home Depot and they're like, what do you got? We'll take it all.
There we go.
All right. So, but that's a good idea. So I've reached out to our friend, Jason Schultz, who is an archivist. And I asked him like, hey, do you have anything on rope drop at Disneyland? So maybe together we can all come up with something.
Cool.
All right. Here's a letter from Nick who says, maybe a year or so ago, I heard you and Jim mention a road upgrade budget that was already proposed and approved for the Reedy Creek Improvement District. There was one year that had a rather larger budget with road expansions to a specific area. I don't remember what the area was, but I immediately thought the only reason to have a road expansion is if there's going to be more traffic to that area, maybe with a new park. Did you look into where the road expansion was going, and is there any area that could be developed? So Nick has good timing because the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board just put out this week its proposal for a new developer agreement, and it had its first public hearing this week, so the week the show comes out. The new agreement includes $100 million for immediate use in roadwork, and it looks like the projects are the same or substantially similar to the developer agreement that the one Disney proposed with Reedy Creek. So both developer agreements have these projects: World Drive North Phase 3, Western Way, and Buena Vista Drive. And Nick, that's the one I think you were talking about, along with this one, which is Western Way widening. So there's a couple of these projects that look to widen the roads that cut west to east across the middle of Disney property, starting west of Coronado Springs and going all the way across property. And then there are either new projects or they have new names in the new development doc. It's the North Buena Vista Drive bridge replacements, unless it's part of some other thing that I just didn't catch. And then a really simple milling and resurfacing of parts of Buena Vista Drive and World Drive. The reason why I think this is the same projects is the amount of money that Disney had last year for road work for fiscal years 2023, 24, and 25 was $109 million. And this is $100 million. So I'm not sure if some work was postponed due to the legal dispute or, and if a couple of things changed, but that's my assumption that those two numbers are so close that it's got to be for that. So the interesting thing, though, is have you read the rest of the proposed developer agreement? I think it just came out yesterday, so you may not have had the time yet. But.
Well, it's interesting. Dwayne Bevel from the Sentinel reached out and was like, what do you think? And we were talking in particular about the $17 billion over the next 20 years. So, but here, you get into the specifics and then we'll talk.
Well, the interesting thing is Disney's committed to $17 billion over the next 10 years, although we don't know when that 10 years starts. But in the new agreement, they're only holding Disney to $8 billion of that $17 billion in the next 10 years. And they're saying $17 billion over the next 20 years. So my thing here, Jim, is this just relaxing the expectations, or has Disney told the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board something about that $17 billion schedule that we don't know yet, right? Because we all know it's $17 billion, but Disney said 10 years. And now the tourism board is saying, yeah, you got 20 to spend it. So the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board is asking for less in the short term and giving Disney more time than Disney's asked for. But here are the other interesting things that are in this developer agreement. I just skimmed it. The new developer agreement, the one that came from the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board, allows Disney to build 53,467 hotel rooms, which is 245 more than Disney put in the now revoked 2032 developer agreement. It also contains 1.25 million square feet of office building space, which is 100,000 square feet more than Disney asked for. Also, the same number of minor theme parks, 5, the same number of major theme parks, 5. The only thing that's less is Disney had originally asked for around 2.5 million square feet of retail and restaurant space, which I don't think they can fill anyway. But the new agreement's got 1.732 million, so about 700,000 square feet less. I mean, you can't argue with being allowed to build more hotel rooms, have more office building space, the same number of theme parks, and slightly less retail space. I mean, that seems okay.
Yeah, but again, what's crucial to stress here, and in fact, I think, you landed on the most interesting point, the notion of give us some time here. Let's not set any hard and fast, this by this, that by that. Again, this is a Disney that still believes that it is the top dog in Orlando, and that, with people coming to vacation in Central Florida, they're coming to us. So they're planning as the mature resort. What do we need? Whereas down the street, what Universal is up to, a very different game plan. That they are still aggressively building, aggressively spending.
Yeah, Universal is building up, and Disney feels like it's tweaking things at this point.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, what do we need? In fact, Dwayne and I got talking about a possible 5th theme park, and I'm going to say this out loud, Len. I don't know, if people are thinking at Epcot and MGM and Animal Kingdom, I don't think that's happening.
I don't think so either. There's no way.
But on the other hand, remember the one park that Disney came within inches of turning the key on, was Nite Kingdom. And that was the nighttime entertainment park that during the day would double as a corporate event space for like team building, confidence building courses and, that sort of thing. So if Disney does a 5th park, it's a Discovery Cove. It's small.
It's Discovery Cove, exactly. Speaking of expansion, here's an email from Joe. He said, on a previous show, you mentioned the possibility of a hotel adjacent to the Magic Kingdom. Exactly where would this go, and how big could it possibly be? I'm assuming it has to have space for parking, for pools, for restaurants, and retail, and it doesn't seem like there's enough room there. All right, so in the show notes, I put a background image, which is from the current Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board comprehensive plan. The areas in green are claimed to be suitable for development. The areas in red are not. So, Jim, this is on page 5 of the show notes. And the interesting thing there is this. I also overlaid the Magic Kingdom from Google Maps, and I scaled it to fit the comprehensive plan. So to the west of the Magic Kingdom is a piece of land bordered on the west by Floridian Way, and to the east by a storage area for the electrical water pageant. That's that north-south strip of land there that's definitely a man-made canal. And then I've added a red cross shape to that piece of land, and just the rectangle around that red cross is a piece of land about 1,000 feet wide by 1,500 feet tall. So it's about 34.5 acres, according to Google Maps, which doesn't count the little stubs of land north and south of that box. So just the rectangle itself. And then for reference, Jim, I also threw the yacht club in there. And Google Maps says the entire yacht club complex, minus the docks that stick into the lake, is no more than 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet, so roughly 24 square acres. And that includes parking in the pools. So that is 24 acres. That is smaller than the 34 acres that Disney has available next to the Magic Kingdom. And not for nothing, there's about 630 rooms at the yacht club. So it seems like, and the yacht club's only, 5 stories tall?
You've got the right location, the right mix of elements. Because remember, this is, we're talking about a monorail or a Magic Kingdom area resort. And in fact, what's so funny is that if you Google the Disney decade and just do literally use the search team's Magic Kingdom Hotel, which was supposed to be literally a Mickey-themed hotel. You open the door to your room and have a Toonie doorknob and that sort of thing. I mean, this was an idea that definitely got floated and is sitting there in the files. And the whole notion of, would people pay top dollar to stay in that location in a themed hotel? And the appropriate phrase is, oh, hell yes.
I don't know that Disney is going to build a Persian hotel. Just because of everything that's going on in that part of the world right now. But, I mean, a Mediterranean hotel, which they have actually considered, with the right sort of painting, the right sort of architecture, could fit in adjacent to Adventureland, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and Beyond Big Thunder, without looking completely out of place. I'm just saying, yeah, I think that's an idea. My point is there's definitely plenty of room right there.
There is real estate. Of course, just the caveat in all of these situations is, and it's also, what's interesting is you mentioned in previous reporting on this, to the effect of previously deemed not developable land, now, what is the phrase? Marginally developable land?
Marginally suitable.
Marginally suitable. And that's a polite way of saying, we drove down test footings that we never saw again.
8 of the 10 test footings were able to survive. All right. And then the last thing is from Matt on our Patreon page, who says, hi, Jim and Len. I was listening to your very first episode last week, walking around the Magic Kingdom in 2011, and you deserve a round of congratulations. During that episode, you were talking about paying for FastPass and requiring park reservations. It only took a decade, but it finally happened. I was unsure if you remembered saying this, so I wanted to share. What even is the statute of limitations on self-congratulations? Thank you for that.
Wow. Okay. It just gives you some idea of how long Len and I have been this cynical.
Exactly. Frankly, to say that it only took them 10 or 12 years to do it is kind of amazing, right? All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim gives us the history of Disneyland's fireworks shows. We'll be right back.
Look, we all know that we should be eating healthier, but let's be honest here. After a long day of work, the very last thing you want to be doing once you get home is cooking, especially a healthy meal with all of that chopping. Well, Green Chef, thanks to all of their pre-measured and already prepped ingredients, which get delivered right to your door, Green Chef not only makes it easy to get a meal on the table, but their chef-curated recipes also give you the opportunity to try some new flavors while sticking to a healthy lifestyle. And what I really enjoy about Green Chef is the variety. Each week, you can choose between 80 rotating meal options that are deliberately designed to suit a wide variety of lifestyles. Now, whether you're plant-based, gluten-free, keto, or counting calories, Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating clean, has something for you. I've got the Green Chef webpage open right now, and I'm looking at some of the delicious and nutritious meals they're offering for the coming week. And man, that Mongolian barbecue ranch steak with sautéed bell peppers and green beans, that looks amazing. But then again, the honey ginger shrimp with cabbage, carrots, and scallions, that looks very tempting as well. And what I especially like about Green Chef is, thanks to their easy-to-follow recipes, you'll be serving up restaurant-worthy meals in no time. And did I mention they even have meals for gut and brain health featuring science-backed recipes with ingredients like fiber, antioxidants, and omega-3 fatty acids? We're talking seriously good food, people, that's also good for you. So if this sounds like something you'd like to try, go to greenchef.com/DisneyDish50 and use code DisneyDish50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. Again, that's greenchef.com/DisneyDish50 and use code DisneyDish50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. We thank Green Chef for sponsoring today's show. So am I the only one who thinks that protein shakes taste, well, bland, bitter, chalky? More to the point, by the time you finish adding things to your protein shake that then make it tolerable, milk, yogurt, fruit, maybe a little artificial sweetener, this protein shake just isn't as simple or as fueling as it once was. And if that's what you're looking for, a high-quality, wholesome food that actually tastes good, well, here's the name to remember, Magic Spoon. I honestly don't know how these guys did it, but Magic Spoon has reinvented your favorite cereals from childhood so that while they still taste great, each serving of Magic Spoon's version of these cereals contains 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs per serving. Plus, Magic Spoon is high protein, gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free, and it's only 140 calories a serving. Better yet, Magic Spoon now offers chewy, delicious treats that come in 4 flavors, marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, blueberry muffin, and double chocolate. These are just like those marshmallowy treats you had as a kid, but they have only 1 gram of sugar and 2 grams of net carbs, and they're packed with 11 to 12 grams of protein per bar. These come 4 to a box, by the way, and I always try to keep a Magic Spoon treat stashed in the car, just in case I need an on-the-go snack. It spares me the temptation of rolling through some drive-thru. So if you'd like to try a high-quality fueling food, head on over to magicspoon.com/DisneyDish to grab a custom bundle of cereal and try the magic for yourself. And don't forget to add their tasty treats to your order, and be sure to use our promo code DisneyDish at checkout to save $5 off. Mind you, Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed by a 100% happiness guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/DisneyDish and use the code DisneyDish to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode. Here's a stat that I find fascinating. 62% of all Americans don't like talking about money. And me personally, I think this reluctance to talk about financial stuff is because, well, a lot of us really don't feel like we're doing all that good a job when it comes to managing our money. I mean, there's so much stuff to keep track of. Credit card balances, how much you have in savings versus how much you need to move over the checking. And let's not forget about the cash you currently have in hand versus this month's outgo when it comes to recurring bills. And what makes this especially frustrating is, well, here's another interesting stat. Over 74% of all consumers have a subscription that they've somehow managed to forget about. And I get it, it's hard to keep track of all of your subscriptions these days, which is why I rely on Rocket Money, which is this personal finance app that will give you a fresh new way to manage your money. Rocket Money makes staying on top of your finances easy. It allows you to view all of your subscriptions on a single screen, so you'll never again lose track of what you're paying for. More to the point, Rocket Money cancels unwanted subscriptions for you with just a couple of clicks. Me personally, what I really love about Rocket Money is its dashboard feature, which allows me to stay on top of what's due, which then makes it easy for me to pay all of my bills on time. More importantly, avoid any late fees or overdrafts. And just so you know, I'm not the only one who's really been enjoying using this personal finance app. Rocket Money has over 5 million users who have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's features. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/DisneyDish. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/DisneyDish. One more time for all you people who are still reluctant to talk about financial stuff. rocketmoney.com/DisneyDish. We thank them for sponsoring today's show.
And we're back. All right, Jim, we've been doing a lot of talk about Magic Kingdom golf courses and stuff lately, right? How does this fit in?
Well, remember, the last month when we were talking about the Magic Kingdom golf course, the miniature golf course next to the Disneyland Hotel, was there from 61 to 78. We mentioned one of the main reasons that Jack Rather decided to spend $500,000 to build this addition to his Anaheim resort, because Walt had decided to close Disneyland on Mondays and Tuesdays during the off-season, starting in the fall of 58. Well, a friend at the archives reached out with an addendum, wanted to be sure to point out that prior to the fall of 1958, Disneyland was closed on Mondays. And in fact, they offered up as proof an advertisement for Walt's Family Fun Park that was published in the Los Angeles Times on Monday, July 18th, 1955. That was the day after the big private party, the one that got broadcast on ABC. The 18th was the first day the paying customers got into the park, not the invited guests. But here's what the ad said. It said, Disneyland, Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom, will officially open on Monday, July 18th. They will remain open every day during the summer from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And beginning in the fall, Disneyland will be closed on Mondays. So my friend at the archive went on to say that between 55 and 57, park managers kept changing their minds about this closed on Monday rule, largely because, and I'm quoting directly from the email here now, that you have to remember that there'd never been a Disneyland before. So Walt and the team down in Anaheim had no idea on a day-to-day basis how many people would actually be showing up each morning at park opening, which made properly staffing the place tough, if not impossible. And I have to ask, Len, you putting on your touring plans hat here, how much data do you think they would have realistically needed to start to, okay, we need this many people on Tuesday, we need this many people on Thursday?
At least a year.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because by the late winter, early spring of 1957, now this is with 20
months. Okay, yes, yeah. Okay.
20 months of informational, operational data under their belt. Thinking was, among Disneyland managers, we now think we know how this place works. More to the point, how Disneyland visitors actually want to use Walt's Family Fun Park. And so, just so you know, Len, Disneyland, at this point in the park's history, they had blown past their 8 millionth visitor. Visitor number 10 million, a Lee Wolfenden, wouldn't show up till December 31st of that same year, 1957. And what you will probably find fascinating about this point in early Disneyland history is that of those 8 million people who'd come to Walt's Family Fun Park, 32% of them were return customers.
Almost 2.5 million return customers. Wow. That's fantastic.
Well, but now what's interesting is that, the thinking was, all right, let's just not give these people new things to do, which, by the way, Walt did. In just 3 months' time, between April and June of 57, Disneyland opened 4 new attractions: the Sleeping Beauty Castle walkthrough, Midget Autopia, Motorboat Cruise, and the Viewliner. But there was also a thinking that, in addition to those 1 out of 3 visitors who are now coming back to experience Disneyland, that the park managers were like, we could improve our profit margins here if we did something to lure in additional customers on weekend nights.
Oh, okay. So weekend nights were the slow time. I guess that makes sense because people come home from work.
Well,
right. Oh, wait. This is the 50s, right? So people are just now trying that new thing called commuting, and they're involved in the rat race, Jim. I don't know if you've heard that.
There we go.
So okay, but so they're not going to Disneyland weekend nights. Okay, got it. Okay,
actually, right, now what was fascinating is, again, because they're pulling together the data, from the way people are actually using the park, and what they're noticing on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays is that parents would come there with small children, and they'd get there at opening. They'd be there right at 10 a.m. But these very same folks are leaving at dusk because of they have small children. And
it's funny you mention this, because we you mentioned, the touring plans data. One of the things that pieces of data we've collected is that we think that dusk is a signal to families that the day is over. And it's really interesting that you say that.
But now where this gets interesting is that so half of Disneyland's paying customers are, and again, they've got the data that says they're bailing out of the place at on average 6 p.m. daily, which means there are seats left empty in restaurants, merch is being unsold to Disneyland lessees. On the other hand, if Disneyland were to institute a date night, and with the idea that you create a new admissions that only becomes available starting at 5 p.m., and just as these parents, with their young children are walking out, this new admissions media that you are marketing to teenagers.
Oh, they're coming in because they're out of school.
And it just, so the notion you can fill those empty restaurants, you can sell that merch. Now, Walt evidently is intrigued by this idea, which calls for extending Disneyland's operating hours on Friday and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. with the idea that the teens come in at 5 p.m., they can get a full 8 hours, with the park staying open to 1. And, but Walt being Walt, it's like, okay, I want to be sure that these teenagers, even though they are paying for discounted admission to Disneyland, that they still get a good value. They still get the full show. So he agrees. It's like, okay, let's give this a try starting in late June of 1957. And in fact, first day that this got underway was June 28th of that same year, 1957. But again, with the clear understanding that no corners would be cut, that all the park's ride shows and attractions would remain open right until 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights. And here's how it would break down, Len. For just $6.50, that covers 2 admissions to the park and a ticket book with 10 adventures. And again, you got to remember, this is back when Disney was still using ticket books.
Was it 10 adventures for 2 people, or was it 5
I have been trying to find that out. I've got the print ad, but it's just one of these things where it says 10 adventures, and it's like, okay, so just 5? Or if on the other hand, I love you, darling, but sit out here, I'm going on the ride. So to make sure as many teens as possible knew about this new admissions material, Disney actually promotes Date Night at Disneyland with a radio jingle, which features these lyrics: date nights are late nights at Disneyland. The sky lights up at 9 each night, Friday and Saturday night. And want to be sure you caught the important part there, Len. So here's the tail end of the same radio jingle. Take your date to Disneyland. Fireworks are great at Disneyland. All right, the sky lights up at 9. Romantic rides in the cool moonlight. We're under a million twinkling lights Friday and Saturday night. The big news there, hidden in that song, is fireworks are great at Disneyland, because prior to Date Night at Disneyland, the sky did not, in fact, light up at 9 each night. And that's because Walt's Family Fun Park, for the first 2 years of its existence, didn't do fireworks. And what's kind of interesting about this is this is now Walt Disney, son of Elias Disney, flinty Midwesterner.
grew up during the Depression.
And just the whole notion of, a firework is literally a flash in the pan. I mean, you light a skyrocket, it shoots off into the sky, somewhere high overhead it explodes, there's a brief blast of color, light, and noise, and then all the money you spent on that particular firework is gone forever.
Well, it's like you could just close your eyes and rub them really hard and see almost the exact same thing. Here's some music.
You're not wrong. And also you have to put yourself in Walt's shoes. This is Disneyland just 2 years into its existence. And the notion at a time when this park seriously needs more rides, shows, and attractions to waste money on something ephemeral like fireworks, something that literally goes up in smoke. Just wasteful. All right, but Tommy Walker, the then head of entertainment at Disneyland, kept nudging Walt, leaning on him when it came to fireworks at Disneyland. So one Friday night, in April of 57, Walt is driven down to Anaheim from Burbank and is planning to settle in upstairs in the Disney family apartment located over the firehouse for a weekend full of work. And in fact, it was on this trip, supposedly, that Walt came down. They were going to be picking the sites for next year's project, the Grand Canyon Diorama and the Alice in Wonderland Dark Ride, which would open in the park the following year in late March and mid-June of 58. And by the way, these were difficult projects at Disneyland. The Grand Canyon Diorama was going to be the very first attraction at the park that the Disneyland train had to pass through. So 306-foot-long building, with glass and taxidermy. And on the other hand, the Alice in Wonderland attraction was the first time ever that the Imagineers did a 2-story tall attraction. Remember, your caterpillar has to climb up to the top inside the building, and then it comes back down outside on the giant leaf. So anyway, Walt's down there to do that, but he's met backstage at the firehouse by Tommy Walker and Joe Fowler, who at the time is the general manager of Disneyland. And before Disney could settle in, Walker and Fowler escort Walt out to a far corner of the parking lot, which had previously just been dirt, but now there's this mound of sand with all of these mortar tubes sticking up out of it.
We're declaring war on the Hilton down the street.
And it's this point that Joe and Tommy introduce Walt to Bernard Wells, who is a Brit, who is literally, Len, a member of pyrotechnics royalty. Serious. Bernard was the sons part of Joseph Wells and Sons, which was this UK-based fireworks company that had been founded back in the 1830s. More to the point, Joseph Wells and Sons had produced and directed the fireworks displays that had celebrated the coronation of 3 different British monarchs, Edward VIII, George VI, and Elizabeth II. Anyway, in 1951, Bernard has a falling out with his father, and as a direct result, he then immigrates to the States and sets up his own pyrotechnics company, the Atlas Fireworks Company. And now Tommy Walker, while he was special events director at U.S.A, and just a quick aside here, Tommy Walker was hired to be Disneyland's first entertainment director because on January 1st, 1955, Walt saw the halftime show that Walker staged for that year's Rose Bowl. And immediately afterwards, Disney sought Walker out and said, "Hey, I need somebody to stage the opening ceremony for Disneyland. Would you be interested?" So Walker's like, "Sure."
Imagine the Rose Bowl being your audition.
Well, no, that's it exactly. It's like, hey, you're pretty good at big things. All right, I got a big thing for you. Now, what's also interesting, though, is Tommy, was always looking to help out his pals, his friends. Take, for example, when it came time to hire a band director for Disneyland. And again, you also have to understand that nobody knew Disneyland was going to be a thing that lasted. So Tommy's original contract with Disneyland was just for 2 weeks, but the park, they figured, well, the park's going to need a marching band. So coincidentally, my dad, Vesey Walker, who at that point was 72 years old, was a famous band director. So, Tommy turned around and hired Vesey to be Disneyland's band director. Again, on a 2-week contract, which got extended all the way to 1970, Len?
2 weeks at a time. We're buying Bic pens by the caseload here. Keep signing these things.
All right, so anyway, back to Bernard Wells, who Tommy had hired to do fireworks displays at U.S.A. So, Tommy knew that Bernard was a pro. More to the point, Walker knew that if he was ever going to convince Walt Disney that fireworks were more than something that just went up in smoke, he needed to show Walt something truly spectacular. And Bernard Wells clearly knew how to deliver spectacular. So that night, out in a remote corner of the Disneyland parking lot, Bernard Wells first fires up a railroad flare, all right? And then he starts
These are not electronically controlled, pumped out through pneumatic tubes.
This
no.
is.
But I'm sure, Jim, as I'm picturing this in my head, I see Mr. Wells, and he does have on appropriate eye protection in my head as we're walking through. I'm sure that's exactly the way this happened. Go ahead.
My understanding is he did this.
He's wearing gloves. It's fine.
He had a road flare in one hand, and and Tommy, Joe, and Walt had all had a little adult beverage while they're standing there in the parking lot.
Yeah, and I'm sure Walt's not smoking as this is happening either.
No, all right, so now picture this: Mr. Wells, drink in one hand, railroad flare in the other, casually begins to walk around the sand pile and periodically lowers, the railroad flare down to a mortar tube that a fuse is sticking out of. Then he lights the wick, and then suddenly a rocket shoots up into the sky and zooms into the air and explodes over Disneyland.
Walt's like, you know what that is, boys? That's free enterprise right there.
Well, but it's what's kind of interesting about this is just in the past week or so, we lost Richard M. Sherman. And I remember talking with Richard about, and I just asked him, well, what was it like to work with Walt? And he said, look, I love working with a guy, but you had to pull teeth to get a compliment out of him. I mean, the highest form of praise when you were working with Walt Disney was like, yeah, that'll do. And again, I mean, that's literally how, for example, he signed off on the score of Mary Poppins. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and.
Yeah,
and that was to circle back to Bernard Wells now. The fireworks show after 5 minutes of shells exploding over Disneyland. Walt finishes his drink and goes, "Okay, boys, let's give it a try." And then just proceeds to walk back to the firehouse for the night. And that's how fireworks displays at Disneyland were started. Literally, a cold April night in '57, out in a remote corner of the parking lot. Now, I got to stress here, Len. It's one thing for Walt to say, okay, let's give it a try. It's quite another thing to persuade the 125 horses who make their home backstage at Disneyland.
I was going to say, isn't there a mule train ride?
Thank you for remembering. Yes.
Because you combine the fireworks with the horses and the mule train ride. I think you definitely have the elements of a memorable date night right there.
There we go. And yeah, now you have to persuade all of these hooved creatures, who are sleeping, north of Frontierland, every Friday and Saturday night. Please ignore the explosion. So, okay, we're going to get to that part of the story, along with how Disneyland eventually has to learn to deal with its neighbors in that housing development that grew up quite quickly next to Walt's Family Fun Park in the 60s, but that'll be in the next installment of this series.
I think the advertisement should have been, kids, come to Disneyland date night where for $6.50 you get 10 ride admissions, fireworks, and you get to understand why America doesn't have free healthcare. Let's just do that as the
Okay, there we go.
All right. That's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Check it out at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media. On next week's show, I may get a preview of Tiana's Bayou Adventure, plus mind reader Chris Cox comes on the show to tell us what it's like to do entertainment on the Disney Cruise Line. And Jim continues the story of Disneyland's fireworks shows. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey, who will be presenting his new film titled I Think I Know What Happened to Cotton Eye Joe at the 3rd Annual West Virginia Bigfoot Festival this coming June 27th to the 29th at the Holly Gray Park in beautiful downtown Sutton, West Virginia. While Eric's doing that, please go on to iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. Virginia, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.